My wife of 5 years has been secretly meeting with her former male coworker for months, lying directly to my face about where she was going. When I finally confronted her with proof, what I discovered about their relationship shattered everything I thought I knew about the woman I married and the mother of my children. My name is Alex, I'm 36 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I had the perfect marriage. I thought I knew my wife better than anyone in this world. I was wrong about everything. Let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding how we got here makes what happened so much more devastating. I met Rebecca when we were both 19, working summer jobs at a local restaurant in our college town. She was this bright, ambitious pre-med student with these incredible hazel eyes that seemed to light up whenever she talked about her dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse. I was studying business, but honestly, I was more interested in making her laugh during our break times than focusing on my coursework. Our first date was supposed to be a simple coffee, but we ended up talking for 6 hours straight. She told me about growing up in a small town in Minnesota, how she was the first person in her family to go to college, and how she wanted to help sick children because she remembered being terrified in hospitals as a kid. I told her about my plans to maybe start my own business someday, how I wanted to build something meaningful that could support a family. We talked about everything that night, our fears, our dreams, our childhoods, our favorite movies. When she laughed at my terrible jokes, I knew I was falling for her. We were inseparable from that moment on. Through the rest of college, she would study for her nursing exams while I worked on business plans at the same coffee shop where we had our first date. We supported each other through everything. Her grueling clinical rotations, my internships, the stress of final exams, job searches after graduation. When she got accepted into the pediatric nursing program at the Children's Hospital downtown, I was the first person she called, crying with joy over the phone. After college, we moved in together in a tiny one-bedroom apartment that we could barely afford, but we were happy. Rebecca would come home exhausted from 12-hour shifts at the hospital, and I would have dinner waiting for her. We would curl up on our second-hand couch and watch Netflix, talking about our days, planning our future. She would tell me stories about the brave little kids she worked with, how they inspired her to be stronger every day. I told her about my job at a marketing firm, how I was learning everything I could so I could eventually start my own agency. Those early years were magical. We were broke, but we were building something together. Every small milestone felt huge. When we finally saved enough to buy a real couch, when Rebecca got promoted to senior nurse, when I landed my first big client. We talked about marriage, about kids, about the house we would buy someday with a big backyard where our children could play. I proposed to her on the 5th anniversary of our first date at that same coffee shop where it all began. I had this whole elaborate plan, but when the moment came, I just got down on one knee right there at our usual table and asked her to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question, tears streaming down her face. The whole coffee shop erupted in applause. It was perfect. We dated for 12 years before we finally got married. By then, we had our life together figured out. I had started my own marketing agency, and it was doing well. Rebecca had become the head pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital. We bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with that big backyard we had always dreamed about. Everything was falling into place exactly as we had planned. Our wedding was everything we had imagined. Small, intimate, surrounded by family and friends who had watched our love story unfold over more than a decade. Rebecca looked absolutely stunning in her dress, and when she walked down that aisle toward me, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We had waited so long for this moment, and it was worth every single day. 2 years later, our son Tyler was born. Holding him for the first time, seeing Rebecca become a mother, watching her natural instincts kick in, it was like witnessing a miracle. She was incredible with him from day one. Then our daughter Emma came along 2 years after that, and our family felt complete. Rebecca took extended maternity leave both times, and I loved watching her in those early months, so natural and loving with our babies. Our house was filled with laughter, with the chaos of toys and baby bottles and diaper bags. Weekend mornings meant pancakes in the kitchen while the kids played in their pajamas. Family movie nights on the couch with popcorn and blankets, bedtime stories and goodnight kisses. Summer barbecues in our backyard with friends and their children running around. This was the life we had dreamed of building together, and we had made it real. Rebecca was an amazing mother, just like I knew she would be. She had this way of making even the most mundane moments special, turning bath time into an adventure, making up silly songs during car rides, creating elaborate treasure hunts around the house on rainy days. Tyler and Emma adored her. They would run to her the moment she came home from work, wrapping their little arms around her legs, competing for her attention. I thought we were happy. I really did. We had our challenges like any couple. Sleepless nights with newborns, financial stress when the business had slow months, the normal wear and tear of daily life with 2 young children. But underneath it all, I believed we had something solid, something unbreakable. We had been through so much together, built so much together. We were a team. But looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. Or maybe I saw them and chose to ignore them, hoping they would resolve themselves. It started small, barely noticeable changes that I convinced myself were just normal fluctuations in a long-term relationship. About 3 years ago, Rebecca started working with a new physical therapist at the children's hospital named Kevin. At first, she mentioned him occasionally in the context of work, how he was helping one of her patients regain mobility after surgery, how innovative his techniques were, how the kids seemed to respond well to him. Normal workplace conversation that I thought nothing of. But gradually, Kevin started appearing in her stories more frequently. Kevin thinks we should try this new approach with Tommy. Kevin suggested I attend this conference about pediatric development. Kevin has such interesting ideas about integrating therapy with nursing care. She would light up when she talked about their collaborations, in a way that reminded me of how excited she used to get about our own projects and plans. I started paying more attention to these mentions of Kevin. Rebecca would describe elaborate work trips they were planning together, conferences in different cities, training seminars, team-building retreats. She seemed more animated discussing these professional adventures with Kevin than she had been about anything in our personal life in months. When I asked questions about these trips, she would brush them off. "Oh, it's just boring work stuff. You wouldn't be interested." The praise kept escalating. "Kevin is so dedicated to his patients. Kevin stays late to help kids even when he's not being paid overtime. Kevin has this amazing way of connecting with children who have given up hope." She talked about him like he was some kind of workplace hero, and I started to feel uncomfortable with how much admiration was in her voice. I tried to meet this Kevin a few times. Rebecca's hospital had family events occasionally, and I thought it would be natural to introduce myself to someone she worked with so closely. But every time I suggested attending one of these events, Rebecca had an excuse. "It's really just for staff members. You'd be bored, it's all medical talk. The kids are too young to be dragged to something like that." I started to wonder why she seemed so reluctant to have her work worlds collide. Then, about 6 months after she started working with Kevin, Rebecca announced she was changing jobs. She had been offered a position at a different hospital across town. Better pay, more responsibility. I was proud of her, but I was also confused. She loved working at the children's hospital. She had been there for 8 years, had close relationships with many of the families, had built a reputation as one of the best pediatric nurses in the city. Why would she want to start over somewhere new? When I asked her about it, she gave practical reasons. "The money is too good to pass up. I need new challenges. It's time for a change." But something felt off about the way she explained it. There was an urgency to her decision that didn't match her usually careful approach to major life changes. She accepted the offer within a week of receiving it, barely giving herself time to think it through. The night before her last day at the children's hospital, Rebecca seemed sad in a way I hadn't expected. She kept checking her phone, then putting it face down on the nightstand with a sigh. When I asked if she was having second thoughts about leaving, she snapped at me. "No, I'm fine. It's just hard to leave people you've worked with." The edge in her voice surprised me. Rebecca was usually so measured, so calm. I thought that would be the end of Kevin. New job, new colleagues, new focus. And for a while, it seemed like it was. Rebecca threw herself into learning the ropes at her new hospital, coming home exhausted but enthusiastic about her new responsibilities. The constant mentions of Kevin stopped. Our life returned to its normal rhythm. But then, 6 months ago, everything started changing again. It began with small shifts in Rebecca's behavior that I initially attributed to work stress or the normal ups and downs of marriage with young children. She became more distant during our conversations, more focused on her phone, less interested in our usual weekend activities as a family. Our physical intimacy, which had always been an important part of our relationship, started declining dramatically. What used to be natural affection between us became forced, mechanical, or non-existent. When I tried to initiate romantic moments, Rebecca would find excuses. I'm too tired. The kids might wake up. I have an early morning tomorrow. These weren't unreasonable explanations, but the frequency and consistency of her disinterest started to worry me. I made efforts to reconnect with her, planning date nights, surprising her with small gifts, taking on more of the household responsibilities so she could relax. But nothing seemed to make a difference. She was physically present but emotionally somewhere else. During dinners, she would scroll through her phone instead of engaging in conversation. During family movie nights, she would sit at the opposite end of the couch instead of cuddling together like we used to. The phone behavior was particularly puzzling. Rebecca had never been particularly attached to social media or constant communication. But suddenly she was always checking messages, always typing responses, always carrying her phone with her even to the bathroom. When I jokingly asked if she had become addicted to Instagram, she laughed it off, but didn't offer any real explanation for the change. I started to notice that these phone sessions often resulted in Rebecca's mood improving dramatically. She would go from seeming tired or stressed to suddenly energetic and happy after checking her messages. Then she would announce plans that hadn't been discussed before. I'm going to stop by the grocery store after work tomorrow. I need to run some errands on Saturday afternoon. The hospital is having a last-minute meeting next week. These spontaneous plans started happening more frequently, usually involving Rebecca going somewhere alone for a few hours. When she returned from these outings, she seemed refreshed, almost glowing, in a way that going to the grocery store or attending a work meeting shouldn't have caused. I began to feel like there were parts of her life that I wasn't privy to, which was a completely new experience in our relationship. The disconnect was affecting our entire family dynamic. Tyler started asking why Mommy seemed sad all the time. Emma began clinging to me more during bedtime routines, asking for extra stories and cuddles. Our children were picking up on the tension between their parents, even though Rebecca and I weren't openly fighting. The warmth that had always characterized our home was slowly evaporating. I tried talking to Rebecca about what I was observing, choosing my words carefully to avoid sounding accusatory or controlling. You seem stressed lately. Is everything okay at work? I feel like we haven't been connecting as much recently. Is there anything on your mind? The kids have noticed you seem distracted. Are you going through something difficult? Her responses were always dismissive. I'm fine, just busy with work. You're imagining things. Everyone goes through phases in long-term relationships. She would turn the conversation back to practical matters. What needed to be done around the house? Which bills needed to be paid? What the children's schedules looked like for the week. Any attempt to dig deeper into emotional territory was met with resistance. I started second-guessing myself constantly. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. Maybe this was just what happened in marriages after 17 years together and 5 years of raising young children. Maybe I was expecting too much from someone who was juggling a demanding career with motherhood. Maybe I needed to be more patient, more understanding, more supportive of whatever she was going through. But then came the day that changed everything. The day that confirmed my worst fears and shattered the trust I had spent 17 years building. It was a Tuesday in late October. Rebecca had mentioned over breakfast that she needed to go to our old hospital for a quick meeting that afternoon. This struck me as unusual because she rarely had reason to visit her former workplace, and when she did, it was typically planned well in advance. But she explained that her former supervisor needed her input on a case involving a patient she had worked with before leaving. It should only take about an hour, she said, kissing me goodbye as she gathered her purse and jacket. I'll be home in time for dinner with the kids. The morning proceeded normally. I worked from my home office while Tyler and Emma were at school, handling client calls and reviewing marketing campaigns. Around lunchtime, I started thinking about the afternoon logistics. Rebecca's meeting would run into the time when the kids needed to be picked up from school and driven to Emma's soccer practice. I decided to check with her about whether I should handle those responsibilities. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Not unusual if she was in a meeting. I sent a text asking her to call me back when she had a moment. An hour passed with no response, which was unlike Rebecca. She was usually very good about communication, especially when it involved coordinating our children's schedules. Feeling slightly concerned, I decided to check her location using Find My iPhone. We had shared our locations with each other years ago for practical reasons, finding each other in crowded places, knowing when the other person had arrived safely at a destination, coordinating pickups and drop-offs. It had never been used for surveillance or mistrust, just convenience and safety. When I opened the app and saw Rebecca's location, my stomach dropped. She wasn't at the children's hospital where she claimed to be having a meeting. She was at Riverside Park, about 15 minutes away from the hospital, in a completely different direction from our house. The little blue dot representing my wife was stationary in the middle of the park, where there were walking trails and picnic areas, but definitely no hospital meetings. I stared at my phone screen, trying to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe the meeting had been moved to a different location. Maybe she had stopped at the park afterward to make phone calls in a quiet environment. Maybe there was a medical emergency at the park, and she had stopped to help as a nurse. My mind raced through possibilities, but none of them explained why she hadn't responded to my text or answered my call. I decided to call again, this time with a specific question that would require her to reveal her location. The phone rang several times before she answered. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice sounded slightly out of breath, like she had been walking or exercising. "Hi, I was just wondering if I should pick up the kids and take Emma to soccer practice, since you're at your meeting. How much longer do you think you'll be?" There was a pause, long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Then she responded, "Oh, I'm still at the hospital. The meeting is running longer than expected. Yeah, can you handle the pickup? I'll probably be another hour or so." She lied. She lied directly to my face about where she was and what she was doing. In 17 years together, through all of our challenges and disagreements, Rebecca had never lied to me about something so basic and verifiable. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. "Okay, no problem," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll take care of everything. See you at home?" "Thanks, honey. I'll be home as soon as I can." I hung up the phone and sat in my office chair, staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. My wife was in a park, not at a hospital meeting, and she had just lied to me about it. The woman I had trusted completely, who had never given me reason to doubt her honesty, had looked me in the eye that morning and told me something that wasn't true, then doubled down on that lie when questioned directly. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog, mechanically going through the motions of picking up Tyler and Emma from school, driving Emma to soccer practice, making small talk with other parents on the sidelines. But my mind was spinning with questions and scenarios, each one more disturbing than the last. Why would Rebecca lie about something so simple? What was she doing at that park? Who might she have been with? When Rebecca came home that evening, she looked tired, but not in the way someone looks tired after a long work meeting. She looked emotionally drained, like someone who had been having intense conversations or dealing with complicated feelings. She kissed me hello, hugged the children, and announced that she wanted to take a shower before dinner. "How was the meeting?" I asked, watching her face carefully for any signs of deception. "Oh, just going over old case files and protocols. Pretty boring stuff." She didn't meet my eyes when she answered, instead focusing on sorting through the mail on the kitchen counter. "I'm glad it's over with." During dinner, Rebecca seemed more present with the children than she had been in weeks, asking about their school days, helping Emma with a math problem, listening attentively to Tyler's story about his science project. It was like she was overcompensating, trying to be the perfect mother and wife after an afternoon of deception. After we put the kids to bed, I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't let this lie stand between us, couldn't pretend I didn't know what I knew, but I also wasn't sure how to approach it. Should I reveal that I had checked her location? Should I give her another chance to tell the truth? Should I demand an immediate explanation? I decided to start with a gentle approach, giving her an opportunity to come clean on her own. We were sitting on the couch, Rebecca scrolling through her phone as usual, when I brought it up. "You seemed tired when you got home today. That meeting must have been really draining." She looked up from her phone, and for a moment, I thought I saw something like guilt flash across her face. Yeah, it was just a lot to process. Bringing up old cases, remembering patients from years ago. It was more emotional than I expected. Did you do anything else while you were out? Get some air, maybe take a walk to clear your head? Again, that hesitation. No, I came straight home after the meeting. Why? She was still lying. Even when given multiple opportunities to tell the truth, even when I was practically leading her toward an honest explanation, she continued to deceive me. The woman I had loved and trusted for 17 years was sitting 3 feet away from me and lying to my face repeatedly. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. My heart was pounding as I said it, but I knew there was no going back. Where were you this afternoon? Her body language changed immediately. She sat up straighter, put her phone down, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Part defiance, part fear, part resignation. I told you I was at the hospital for a meeting. No, you weren't. I pulled out my phone and showed her the Find My iPhone screen, with her location clearly marked at Riverside Park. You were here, at the park, and when I called you, you lied about where you were. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Rebecca stared at the phone screen, then at me, then back at the screen. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to handle being caught in an undeniable lie. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I can explain. Please do. She took a deep breath, and I could see her hands trembling slightly. I did go to the hospital for a meeting, but it ended early. Then I went for a walk in the park to think about some things. What things? Another pause. Just work stuff, personal stuff. I needed some time alone to process everything. I knew she was still not telling me the whole truth. The lies were getting more elaborate, more desperate. Rebecca, you were at that park for over an hour. Were you alone the entire time? The question hung in the air between us, and I watched as Rebecca's resolve finally crumbled. Her shoulders sagged, and she put her face in her hands. No, she whispered. I wasn't alone. Who were you with? Kevin. The name hit me like a punch to the stomach. Kevin, the physical therapist from her old job. The one she had praised constantly and then seemingly forgotten about when she changed hospitals. Kevin, who I had never met despite Rebecca working closely with him for months. Kevin, who she was apparently still in contact with despite not working together anymore. Kevin from your old job? Yes. How long have you been meeting with him? We've been in touch since I left the hospital, just as friends. We grab coffee sometimes or go for walks. It's completely innocent. The words completely innocent echoed in my head. If it was completely innocent, why had she lied about it? Why had she hidden these meetings from me? Why had she gone to such elaborate lengths to deceive me about something that was supposedly harmless? How often is sometimes? I don't know. Maybe once a month or so. For how long has this been going on? Since I left the hospital. So about 6 months. 6 months. 6 months of secret meetings with a man she had once praised constantly. 6 months of lies and deception. 6 months of wondering why my wife seemed distant and distracted, when the answer was that she was investing emotional energy in a relationship with another man that she felt the need to hide from her husband. Rebecca, I need to see your messages with him. What? Why? Because you've been lying to me for 6 months about meeting with another man, and I need to understand what's really going on. There's nothing going on. We're just friends. Then you shouldn't have any problem showing me your conversations. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw everything I needed to know. If their relationship was truly innocent, she would have no reason to hide their messages. If it was just friendship, she would be able to show me their conversations without concern. But she was afraid to let me see what they had been saying to each other, which meant there was something in those messages that would upset or concern me. I don't think that's fair, she said finally. Everyone deserves privacy, even in marriage. You don't show me every conversation you have with your friends. I don't lie to you about who I'm spending time with. I don't sneak around meeting people in parks. And if you ask to see messages with any of my friends, I would show you without hesitation because I have nothing to hide. Then, the logic of my argument was undeniable, and I could see Rebecca struggling to find a counter-argument that didn't involve admitting there was something inappropriate about her relationship with Kevin. Fine, she said, reaching for her phone. "But this is a violation of my privacy, and I want you to know that." She opened her messaging app, and I expected her to show me text messages. Instead, she navigated to LinkedIn, which surprised me. "Who has extended personal conversations through LinkedIn messaging?" "You've been talking to him through LinkedIn. It's just easier that way. We connected professionally when I left the hospital, and it evolved into casual conversation." She handed me the phone, and I began scrolling through months of messages between my wife and Kevin. What I saw made my blood run cold. The conversation started professionally enough, but quickly became personal and intimate in a way that crossed every boundary of appropriate friendship. They weren't just discussing work or casual topics. They were sharing deep personal thoughts, supporting each other through difficult times, making plans for regular meetings, and expressing affection in ways that felt more romantic than platonic. The messages were full of heart emojis, kissing face emojis, and other symbols that suggested romantic interest rather than casual friendship. Kevin would send messages like, "Thinking of you today," and "Can't wait to see you again." Rebecca would respond with similar sentiment, telling him how much their conversations meant to her, how she looked forward to their time together. But what was most disturbing was the pattern of their meetings. They weren't random coffee dates or spontaneous encounters. These were planned, regular meetings that coincided with periods of tension in my marriage with Rebecca. When she seemed most distant from me, most disinterested in our relationship, most focused on her phone, it was because she was planning her next meeting with Kevin or processing the emotions from their last encounter. As I scrolled through the messages, I could see references to meetings I now realized had been disguised as other activities. Grocery store trip had been coffee with Kevin. Work meeting had been a walk with Kevin. Running errands had been wine with Kevin at a restaurant downtown. How many times had she lied to me about where she was going and who she was with? Some of the messages had been edited, showing that Rebecca had gone back and changed what she had originally written to Kevin. What had she said initially that she felt the need to modify? What level of intimacy or inappropriate content had she decided was too much to leave in their conversation history? "Rebecca," I said, my voice shaking as I continued scrolling through months of deception. "This is not a casual friendship." "Yes, it is. We're just friends who support each other. Friends don't send each other kissing emojis and heart symbols. Friends don't tell each other they're thinking of you and can't wait to see you again. Friends don't meet secretly and then lie to their spouses about it. You're reading too much into it. People use emojis casually these days. And the lies. How do you explain lying to me for 6 months about where you were going and who you were with?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands in her lap. When she finally looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes. "I don't know why I lied. I knew you wouldn't understand. I knew you would think it was something it wasn't. I wanted to have something that was mine, you know? Something separate from being a wife and mother. Kevin listens to me in a way that makes me feel like myself again." Her words cut deep because they revealed how disconnected she had felt from our marriage while investing emotional energy in another relationship. Instead of talking to me about feeling lost or unfulfilled, instead of working on our relationship together, she had turned to another man for the emotional connection she was missing. "So you've been having an emotional affair." "It's not an affair. Nothing physical has happened." Emotional intimacy with someone you're hiding from your spouse is still a form of infidelity, Rebecca. You've been sharing parts of yourself with Kevin that you haven't been sharing with me. You've been looking forward to seeing him more than you look forward to spending time with your own husband. The truth of what I was saying seemed to hit her, and she began crying harder. I never meant for it to happen this way. It just evolved. Kevin was going through a difficult time with his own marriage, and I was feeling disconnected from everything, and we started talking more, and it felt good to have someone understand what I was going through. Kevin was having marriage problems too, so my wife had been providing emotional support and intimate conversation to a man who was also vulnerable and potentially looking outside his marriage for connection. This revelation made their relationship seem even more inappropriate and dangerous. "How often have you been meeting with him?" "About once a month, like I said." I scrolled back through the messages, looking for references to their meetings. "Rebecca, according to these messages, you saw him 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks before that, and then 2 weeks before that. That's not once a month. She wiped her eyes and looked at the phone screen. Okay, maybe it's been more frequent lately. We've both been going through difficult times. More lies. Even when confronted with evidence, even when caught red-handed, she was still trying to minimize and deceive. How could I trust anything she said when she continued to lie even in the face of undeniable proof? The message from your meeting today says you were together for an hour and a half. You told me it was a 30-minute walk. Time gets away from you when you're having deep conversations. What do you talk about for an hour and a half? Life, work stress, marriage problems, kids, just everything. You discuss our marriage problems with Kevin? The question seemed to surprise her, as if she hadn't fully considered the implications of sharing intimate details about our relationship with another man. Sometimes, he gives good advice. I felt betrayed on a completely new level. Not only had Rebecca been emotionally intimate with another man, but she had been discussing the private details of our marriage with him. Our problems, our conflicts, our intimate struggles were being shared with someone outside our relationship. Someone who had his own interest in maintaining Rebecca's attention and affection. What kind of advice does Kevin give you about our marriage? Just perspective. He helps me think through things. What kinds of things? She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the questioning. Like when we fight, or when I'm feeling disconnected, or when I'm not sure how to handle situations with the kids. So Kevin had been serving as Rebecca's emotional confidant and relationship counselor, providing advice about problems in our marriage while simultaneously developing an inappropriate, intimate relationship with her. He was positioned to benefit from any deterioration in our relationship, since it would drive Rebecca closer to him and justify their continued connection. I thought about all the times over the past 6 months when Rebecca had seemed to recover quickly from arguments between us, when she had suddenly changed her perspective on issues we had been disagreeing about, when she hadn't seemed interested in talking through problems with me directly. She had been processing these experiences with Kevin instead of with her husband, getting emotional support and guidance from a man who had romantic interest in her, rather than working on our marriage together. Rebecca, do you understand how betrayed I feel right now? I know you're upset, and I'm sorry I lied, but I need you to understand that nothing physical has happened between Kevin and me. We're genuinely just friends. Just friends don't meet secretly. Just friends don't lie to their spouses about spending time together. Just friends don't send romantic emojis and talk about missing each other. Just friends don't discuss intimate marriage problems together. I know it looks bad, but it doesn't just look bad, Rebecca. It is bad. You've been having an emotional affair for 6 months while I've been trying to figure out why my wife seemed to be losing interest in our family. The weight of what had been happening finally seemed to hit her. All those months when I had noticed her distance, her distraction, her lack of interest in physical and emotional intimacy with me, she had been investing that energy in Kevin. All those times I had tried to plan special dates or romantic evenings, she had been looking forward to her next secret meeting with another man. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far. How far has it gone, Rebecca? Because I'm looking at these messages and I see references to things you haven't explained. Wine dates, long walks, deep conversations about personal topics. What exactly has been happening during these meetings? We talk. We walk around the park or sit at coffee shops or sometimes have a glass of wine. We discuss our lives, our struggles, our goals. It's emotional support, not romance. Emotional support that you hide from your husband and lie about repeatedly. I know I shouldn't have lied. Why did you lie? Because I knew you wouldn't understand. I knew you would be jealous and insecure and would make me stop seeing him. Her answer revealed that she knew her relationship with Kevin was inappropriate. She knew it was something that would upset me, something that crossed boundaries, something that threatened our marriage. But instead of stopping the inappropriate behavior, she had chosen to hide it and lie about it so she could continue. Rebecca, if you knew I would have a problem with this relationship, doesn't that tell you something about the nature of the relationship itself? She was quiet for a long time, considering the implications of what I had said. If she had to hide something from her spouse, if she knew her spouse would be upset by her behavior, then that behavior was probably inappropriate, regardless of her justifications. I don't know, she said finally. I'm confused about everything right now. Are you in love with Kevin? The question hung in the air between us, It was the question I was most afraid to ask and most afraid to hear the answer to. But I needed to know how deep this betrayal went, how much of my wife's heart belonged to someone else. "No," she said, but there was hesitation in her voice. "I care about him as a friend, but I'm not in love with him. But you've thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. He makes me feel understood in a way that I haven't felt in a long time." There it was, the admission that Kevin provided something emotional that she felt was missing from our marriage. The admission that she had considered romantic feelings for him. The admission that their relationship had developed to a point where the line between friendship and romance had become blurred. "Rebecca, I need you to understand something. What you've been doing with Kevin is a form of infidelity. Even if nothing physical has happened, you've been emotionally unfaithful to our marriage. You've been sharing intimacy with another man while lying to your husband about it." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I just don't know how to fix it." How to fix it starts with complete honesty. No more lies, no more minimizing, no more excuses. I need to know everything that has happened between you and Kevin. Over the next hour, Rebecca told me the full story of her relationship with Kevin. It had started innocently enough when they worked together, but there had always been a spark, an attraction that both of them had acknowledged but never acted on while she was still at the hospital. When she left for the new job, they had stayed in touch professionally, but their conversations had quickly become personal. Kevin was going through problems in his own marriage, feeling unappreciated and misunderstood by his wife. Rebecca was feeling disconnected from our family, overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood and work, missing the sense of adventure and possibility she had felt in her younger years. Their conversations had provided both of them with emotional validation and excitement that was missing from their respective marriages. Their first meeting outside of work had happened about 6 months ago, when Kevin had suggested they meet for coffee to catch up. Rebecca had told me she was going grocery shopping. The coffee date had stretched into a 3-hour conversation about their lives, their dreams, their disappointments. They had talked about feeling trapped in their current situations, about wondering if they had settled too early, about missing the passion and intensity of their younger selves. From there, the meetings had become regular. They would meet at different locations around the city: parks, coffee shops, wine bars, bookstores. They would walk and talk for hours, sharing intimate details about their marriages, their children, their fears and desires. The emotional connection had grown stronger with each meeting, and both of them had acknowledged that their relationship was becoming something more than friendship. "Have you kissed him?" I asked, dreading the answer but needing to know. "No," Rebecca said quickly. "We've never been physical. But what? But there have been moments where we both felt the temptation. Times when we were sitting close together or walking side by side, and the attraction was obvious. We've talked about it, acknowledged that we're drawn to each other, but we've never acted on it." So they had discussed their mutual attraction, had acknowledged romantic feelings for each other, had actively chosen to continue meeting despite knowing they were tempted to take their relationship to a physical level. This was far beyond innocent friendship. This was two married people carrying on an emotional affair, while explicitly discussing their desire to make it physical. "Rebecca, do you realize that Kevin has been positioning himself as your marriage counselor, while simultaneously trying to seduce you? He's been encouraging you to share problems in our relationship, while offering himself as an alternative." She looked confused, as if this perspective had never occurred to her. "Kevin isn't trying to seduce me. He's been supportive and understanding. A man who meets secretly with a married woman, who encourages her to share intimate details about her marriage problems, who sends romantic emojis and tells her how much he misses her, who discusses mutual attraction with her. That man is absolutely trying to seduce her, and he's been very strategic about it." I could see Rebecca processing this information, perhaps recognizing for the first time how Kevin's behavior fit a pattern of emotional manipulation and seduction. He had positioned himself as her confidant and advisor while simultaneously developing romantic feelings with her, creating a situation where any problems in our marriage would drive her closer to him. "I never looked at it that way," she admitted. "Because you were getting something from the relationship that you wanted: attention, validation, excitement, emotional support. But Kevin was getting something too. He was getting access to a married woman's emotions and intimacy while undermining her marriage." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of everything that had been revealed. 6 months of deception, lies, emotional infidelity, and betrayal. 6 months of Rebecca investing in another relationship while our marriage deteriorated. 6 months of me wondering what was wrong with our family while the answer was that my wife was falling for another man. What happens now? Rebecca asked finally. It was a good question, and one I had been dreading. What did happen now? How do you rebuild trust after such extensive deception? How do you repair a marriage when one partner has been emotionally unfaithful for months? How do you move forward when you feel like you don't know the person you've been married to for 5 years? I don't know, I said honestly. I need time to process all of this. I need to figure out if our marriage can survive this level of betrayal. Do you want me to stop talking to Kevin? The fact that she was asking rather than immediately volunteering to end contact with him told me everything I needed to know about where her loyalties lay. If she truly understood the damage her relationship with Kevin had caused, if she was truly committed to repairing our marriage, she would have already ended all contact with him without needing to be asked. Rebecca, if you have to ask that question, then you don't understand the severity of what you've done. It's complicated. Kevin has become important to me. He's been there for me during a difficult time. Kevin has been there for you during a difficult time that he helped create by encouraging you to distance yourself from your husband. Kevin has been there for you while you were lying to your husband and betraying your marriage vows. Kevin has been there for you while your children were watching their mother become emotionally unavailable. The mention of Tyler and Emma seemed to hit her hard. She had been so focused on her own emotional needs and her relationship with Kevin that she hadn't fully considered how her behavior was affecting our children. They had noticed her distraction, her distance, her constant phone checking. They had felt the tension between their parents even though we hadn't been openly fighting. I never wanted to hurt the kids, she said. But you did hurt them. You hurt all of us. And if you want any chance of repairing the damage you've caused, you need to end all contact with Kevin immediately and commit completely to working on our marriage. Okay, she said quietly. I'll tell him we can't talk anymore. I want to see the message before you send it. She looked surprised by my request but nodded. She opened her phone and began typing a message to Kevin. I watched over her shoulder as she wrote, Kevin, I need to stop our friendship. My husband found out about our meetings and he's upset. I think it's best if we don't talk anymore. No, I said. That's not going to work. What's wrong with it? You're making me the villain. You're making it sound like I'm being unreasonable and controlling. You're not taking responsibility for the fact that you've been having an emotional affair. She deleted the message and tried again. Kevin, I've realized that our relationship has become inappropriate. I've been unfaithful to my marriage and I need to focus on my family. Please don't contact me anymore. It was better, but still felt incomplete. Add that you're sorry for any confusion or mixed signals and that you hope he can work things out with his own wife. She made the additions and showed me the final message. It was clear, direct, and took appropriate responsibility for the situation. She sent it, then immediately blocked Kevin's number and deleted him from her LinkedIn contacts. There, she said. It's done. But it wasn't done. Ending contact with Kevin was just the first step in a very long process of rebuilding trust and repairing our marriage. The damage that had been caused couldn't be undone with a single message. The lies, the deception, the emotional infidelity, the months of investment in another relationship while our marriage suffered, all of that would take time and work to heal. Over the following days and weeks, the full impact of Rebecca's betrayal began to sink in. I found myself constantly questioning everything she told me, wondering if she was still lying about other things. When she went to work, I wondered if she was really going to work. When she ran errands, I wondered if she was meeting someone else. When she checked her phone, I wondered if she had found new ways to communicate with Kevin. The trust that had been the foundation of our 17-year relationship was completely shattered. I realized that I had never truly understood what trust meant until I lost it. It wasn't just believing that Rebecca wouldn't cheat on me. It was believing that she would be honest with me, that she would share important parts of her life with me, that she would prioritize our marriage and family above other relationships. Rebecca seemed to understand the gravity of what she had done, at least intellectually. She apologized repeatedly, promised complete transparency going forward, and made efforts to be more present and engaged with our family. but I could see that she was struggling with the loss of her relationship with Kevin. She seemed sad, almost like she was grieving, which only reinforced my understanding of how important Kevin had become to her. I suggested marriage counseling, and Rebecca agreed immediately. We found a therapist who specialized in infidelity and betrayal, and began the difficult work of examining what had gone wrong in our marriage and how we might be able to repair it. The sessions were painful, but necessary, forcing us to confront issues we had been avoiding for years. In therapy, Rebecca acknowledged that she had been feeling disconnected from our marriage for longer than she had admitted. The demands of raising young children, managing household responsibilities, and maintaining her career had left her feeling overwhelmed and unappreciated. She had lost touch with her sense of herself as an individual rather than just a wife and mother. Kevin had provided her with a sense of excitement and possibility that had been missing from her daily life. But she also came to understand how her choices had damaged our family. Instead of talking to me about her feelings of disconnection, instead of working together to address problems in our marriage, she had turned to another man for emotional support. She had allowed that relationship to develop into something romantic while lying to me about it for months. She had prioritized her own emotional needs over the well-being of our family. For my part, I had to acknowledge that I hadn't been as attentive to Rebecca's emotional needs as I should have been. I had been focused on building my business, managing household logistics, and handling the practical aspects of our life together. I had noticed Rebecca's distance and unhappiness, but I hadn't pushed hard enough to understand what was causing it, or to address it directly. The therapy sessions helped us understand how we had drifted apart and how Rebecca's affair had developed. But understanding didn't automatically heal the damage that had been done. I still struggled with intrusive thoughts about Rebecca and Kevin together. I still felt angry about the months of lies and deception. I still wondered if there were other things Rebecca hadn't told me about. 3 months after the initial confrontation, I was looking through our shared photo album on iCloud when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a photo Rebecca had taken of herself at a wine bar downtown, posted to social media about 2 months earlier. I remembered the day she had taken that photo. She had told me she was meeting a friend from work for drinks after a particularly stressful day. But now I realized that the friend from work had been Kevin. The photo showed Rebecca looking happy and relaxed, wine glass in hand, with a glow on her face that I hadn't seen at home in months. In the background of the photo, partially visible, was a man's hand and arm reaching across the table. Kevin's hand and arm. I had been looking at evidence of one of Rebecca's secret meetings with Kevin for months without realizing it. She had even posted it publicly, confident that I wouldn't recognize the significance of what I was seeing. The casual way she had documented and shared evidence of her affair while lying to me about it felt like a fresh betrayal. When I confronted Rebecca about the photo, she initially tried to deny that Kevin was in it. When I pointed out the obvious evidence of another person at her table, she admitted that yes, Kevin had been there, but claimed she had forgotten to mention it when we had discussed all of their meetings. How do you forget to mention a wine date when your husband is asking for complete honesty about your affair? I asked. It wasn't a wine date. We just happened to both order wine. Rebecca, stop. Please just stop lying to me. She broke down crying, admitting that she had intentionally withheld details about some of their meetings because she was afraid of how I would react. Even after being caught, even after promising complete transparency, even after months of marriage counseling, she was still lying to me about her relationship with Kevin. This revelation set back our progress significantly. I realized that Rebecca hadn't been fully honest about the extent of her affair, which meant I still didn't know the complete truth about what had happened. How could we rebuild trust when she was still being deceptive? How could we move forward when I couldn't be sure she was telling me everything? I made the decision to take a break from our marriage. I moved into the guest bedroom and told Rebecca that I needed space to figure out whether our relationship could be salvaged. The children were confused and upset by the obvious tension between their parents, which added another layer of pain to an already devastating situation. During this separation period, I did a lot of soul-searching about what I wanted for my future. Did I want to stay married to someone who had been willing to lie to me for months about something so fundamental? Did I want to try to rebuild a relationship with someone who had shown such poor judgment and lack of respect for our marriage? Did I want to put our children through the potential trauma of divorce, or the potential trauma of growing up in a home where their parents didn't trust each other? I also thought a lot about my own role in the deterioration of our marriage. While I hadn't been the one to have an affair, I had contributed to the emotional distance between us. I had been complacent about nurturing our relationship, assuming that the love and connection we had built over 17 years would sustain itself without active maintenance. But mostly, I grieved. I grieved the loss of the marriage I thought I had. I grieved the loss of trust in the person I had loved most in the world. I grieved the loss of the future I had imagined for our family. Even if Rebecca and I managed to work things out, our relationship would never be the same. The innocence and security I had felt in our marriage was gone forever. Rebecca, for her part, seemed to finally understand the full impact of what she had done. She wrote me a long letter, taking complete responsibility for her choices, acknowledging the damage she had caused, and outlining specific steps she wanted to take to rebuild our marriage. She suggested individual therapy for herself to understand why she had made such destructive choices. She offered to find a new job if being in the same city as Kevin made me uncomfortable. She proposed a post-nuptial agreement that would ensure I received primary custody of the children if she ever betrayed our marriage again. The letter was thoughtful and seemed sincere, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. Could someone who had been capable of such extensive deception really change? Could I ever trust her completely again? Was love enough to overcome betrayal of this magnitude? After 6 weeks of living separately while remaining in the same house, I made the decision to try to rebuild our marriage. Not because I was confident it would work, but because I owed it to our children and to the 17 years Rebecca and I had shared to make a genuine effort at reconciliation. The process of rebuilding trust was slow and difficult. Rebecca followed through on her commitments. She started individual therapy. She gave me complete access to her phone and social media accounts. She provided detailed accounting of her time when she was away from home. But I struggled with anxiety and suspicion for months. Every time she was late coming home from work, every time she received a phone call I didn't recognize, every time she seemed distracted or distant, I wondered if she was being unfaithful again. Rebecca was patient with my suspicion and anxiety, understanding that she had created this situation through her own choices. She answered every question I asked, provided every reassurance I needed, and worked hard to demonstrate through her actions that she was committed to our marriage. Slowly, very slowly, I began to trust her again. It's been almost a year now since I discovered Rebecca's affair, and we're still working on rebuilding our marriage. Some days are better than others. We've made progress in therapy, learning to communicate more effectively, and to address problems before they lead to emotional distance. Rebecca has been faithful and honest, as far as I can tell, and has shown genuine remorse for the damage she caused. But the betrayal changed something fundamental in our relationship. I love Rebecca, but I love her differently now, with more caution, with less certainty, with the knowledge that the person you trust most in the world is capable of devastating deception. The security and comfort I once felt in our marriage has been replaced by a constant low-level awareness that everything could be lost again. Our children have adjusted to the new dynamic in our household, though I know they were affected by the period of tension and conflict. Tyler occasionally asks if Rebecca and I are going to get divorced, and Emma has become more clingy and anxious about separation. We've been careful to reassure them that we love them and that our family is stable. But children are perceptive, and they know something significant happened. I've learned a lot about myself through this experience. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, capable of surviving betrayal and devastation without completely falling apart. I've learned that love isn't always enough to sustain a marriage. It also requires trust, communication, commitment, and constant work from both partners. I've learned that the person you think you know best in the world can still surprise you in the most painful ways. I've also learned that forgiveness is a process, not a moment. I thought that deciding to try to rebuild our marriage meant that I had forgiven Rebecca, but I've discovered that forgiveness comes in waves. Some days I feel genuinely past the betrayal, focused on our future together. Other days the anger and hurt feel as fresh as they did on that first terrible evening when I confronted her with the truth. Rebecca has learned lessons too. She's learned that emotional affairs are just as destructive as physical ones, that lies compound and create their own damage, and that the excitement of a new relationship isn't worth destroying a family. She's learned that communication and honesty in marriage aren't optional, and that avoiding difficult conversations only creates bigger problems later. Most importantly, she's learned that actions have consequences, and that some consequences can't be undone. Even if our marriage survives and eventually thrives again, she will always be someone who was unfaithful to her husband. I will always be someone whose wife betrayed him. Our children will always have grown up in a home that was disrupted by infidelity. These facts are now part of our family's story, and they can't be erased. Looking back on the signs I missed, I realized that Rebecca's affair didn't happen overnight. It was the result of months of small choices, choosing to respond to Kevin's messages instead of talking to me about her problems, choosing to meet with him secretly instead of addressing issues in our marriage, choosing to lie about her whereabouts instead of being honest about her feelings. Each choice seemed small at the time, but together they led to the near destruction of our family. I want to be clear about something important. I don't believe that my failings as a husband justified Rebecca's affair. Yes, I could have been more attentive to her emotional needs. Yes, I could have worked harder to maintain romance and connection in our marriage. Yes, I could have pushed harder when I noticed her distance and unhappiness. But none of those failings gave her the right to seek emotional intimacy with another man while lying to me about it. The appropriate response to problems in a marriage is to address them directly with your spouse, seek counseling if necessary, or end the marriage if the problems can't be resolved. The appropriate response is not to begin an affair while maintaining the benefits and security of marriage. Rebecca had choices at every step of the way, and she consistently chose deception and betrayal over honesty and commitment. That said, I do take responsibility for my role in the deterioration of our marriage. Relationships require active maintenance, and I had become complacent about nurturing our connection. I had assumed that our history together and our shared commitment to our children would be enough to sustain us through difficult periods. I had focused more on providing for our family financially than on providing for Rebecca emotionally. The experience has taught me to pay closer attention to the health of our relationship, to ask harder questions when I sense distance or problems, and to prioritize our marriage even when other demands feel more urgent. It's taught me that 17 years of history doesn't guarantee another 17 years of future, and that every day we choose to stay committed to each other. For anyone who might be going through something similar, I want to offer a few thoughts based on what I've learned. First, trust your instincts. If you sense that something is wrong in your relationship, if your partner seems distant or secretive, if their behavior changes in ways that concern you, don't ignore those feelings. Address them directly, ask hard questions, and demand honest answers. Second, understand that emotional affairs are real affairs. The absence of physical intimacy doesn't make emotional infidelity less damaging or less serious. If your partner is sharing intimate thoughts and feelings with someone else while hiding that relationship from you, they are being unfaithful to your marriage regardless of whether anything physical has happened. Third, rebuilding trust after betrayal is possible, but it requires complete commitment from both partners. The unfaithful spouse must be willing to be completely transparent, to answer every question honestly, to accept responsibility for their choices, and to do the hard work of understanding why they made those choices. The betrayed spouse must be willing to remain open to reconciliation while also being realistic about what rebuilding trust requires. Fourth, get professional help. Marriage counseling isn't a magic solution, but it provides tools and framework for addressing the complex issues that arise after infidelity. A good therapist can help both partners understand how the affair happened, what needs to change to prevent it from happening again, and how to rebuild intimacy and connection. Finally, understand that there are no guarantees. Some marriages survive infidelity and become stronger. Others end in divorce despite everyone's best efforts. The outcome depends on many factors: the nature of the betrayal, the commitment of both partners, the presence of other issues in the marriage, and sometimes just luck and timing. What matters is that you make decisions based on your own values and needs, not on what other people think you should do. As for Rebecca and me, we're still working on our marriage every day. Some days are good, filled with laughter and connection and hope for our future together. Some days are hard, marked by lingering hurt and anxiety and the weight of what we've been through. Most days are somewhere in between, ordinary moments of family life that are both precious and fragile, in ways they never were before. I can't predict what our future holds. I can't say with certainty that we'll make it another year, much less another 17 years. What I can say is that we're both committed to the work of rebuilding what was broken, even though we know it will never be exactly the same as what we had before. Our children are resilient and loved, and they're learning important lessons about forgiveness, commitment, and the complexity of adult relationships. Tyler has become more empathetic and emotionally aware. Emma has learned that families can go through difficult times and still stay together. Both of them know that their parents love them unconditionally, even when we're struggling with our own relationship. Rebecca is a different person than she was a year ago. More self-aware, more committed to our marriage, more honest about her feelings and needs. She's working hard to rebuild the trust she destroyed, and she's shown genuine growth and remorse. Whether that's enough to sustain our marriage long-term remains to be seen, but I'm grateful for her efforts and her commitment to our family. I'm different too. I'm less trusting but more communicative. I'm less secure but more attentive to the health of our relationship. I'm less certain about the future, but more grateful for each good day we have together. The betrayal took away my innocence about marriage and love, but it also taught me not to take anything for granted. The story isn't over yet. Rebecca and I are still writing it together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. Some chapters will be happy, some will be sad, and some will be ordinary in the best possible way. What matters is that we're both committed to writing it honestly, with full awareness of what we've been through and what we might face in the future. If you're dealing with betrayal in your own relationship, know that you're not alone. Know that you have the strength to survive whatever comes next, whether that's rebuilding your marriage or ending it. Know that you deserve honesty, respect, and faithfulness from your partner. And know that whatever you decide to do, you can create a future that brings you peace and happiness. The person you trust most in the world might disappoint you, might even betray you, but that doesn't mean you can't trust again, love again, or hope again. It just means you do it with your eyes wide open, with full awareness of both the beauty and the risk that comes with giving your heart to another person. And sometimes, that awareness makes the choice to love even more meaningful than it was before.